From the beginning, stock cars outran the police to deliver the hooch to our ancestors. So sweet. Are you ready for a trip down victory lane, where Richard Petty's winnings were insane and Dale Earnhardt put everyone to shame? Canadian Junior Handley is in the Hall of Fame. From the home of Canada's crown jewel, Ucasa Motor Speedway, live from Haldimand County, it's time for the Driver in Deep podcast. Are you ready?
Welcome everyone. Wingnutsports.com is proud to present the Driver in Deep podcast with your hosts, Alex and Mark. Alex, we have another great guest today from the racing business, and I'm looking forward to hearing some more great stories.
Yeah, me too. Today we have champion dirt racer Joe Plazek from Ontario, Canada, with us. And yeah, looking forward to speaking with Joe. It's been a little bit a while for me.
Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to meeting him. Time for a sponsor. We're going to welcome back and thank Hunsinger's Plumbing, HVAC, and Electrical for presenting this episode of Driver in Deep.
For sure. Hunsinger's, like you said before, it's a family-run business, and they've been around for a long, long time, ever since Sir John A. Macdonald was the Prime Minister of Canada, so must be doing something right. And, Hunsinger's, I said before, they proudly serve the communities of Haldimand, Norfolk, Six Nations, and Hamilton. And your phone number, once again, where you can reach them at, is 905-779-3444, or just go to their website, hunsingers.com. And don't forget, tell them that you heard it on Driver in Deep podcast.
Yeah, that's great, Alex. And if you listened to our last episode, you know that I gave my own testimony regarding the great experience that I had recently with Hunsinger's. But I'd like to just leave it at this. If your toilet will no longer flush those clingers, or your furnace is making noise like a bad singer, get on the phone and call Hunsinger's. That's hunsingers.com.
Hey, Mark, as I mentioned, we have a very accomplished racer, not only in Ontario, but also Western and Central New York, joining us today. Welcome to Driver in Deep podcast, Joe. You're our first guest from the dirt side of things, and you've had a ton of success with many big wins and championships, and we appreciate you spending some time today.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's an honor. After being out for over 20 years now, you're kind of honored when people ask you to do a race interview.
Yeah, Joe, it's great to meet you as well, and thanks for coming on the podcast, as Alex said. And Alex may have also told you, but I'm fairly new to the racing world, and really I'm going to be here today just to mostly try to keep Alex in line. But I have done my research on your career. From what I read, you're a hell of a racer. And I understand, though, that you started out racing motorcycles, I think somewhere around 11 or 12 years old. From there is when you went into stock car racing, somewhere around 16. Is that correct? And why the transition?
Well, motorcycles was the easiest to get into when you're, 10 or 11. What happened was we had a family friend that they had a mini bike. And, of course, every time we visited, the kid couldn't get on his mini bike because I had it and I was gone with it, right? So I just loved it, and I kept saying, I got to get one of those. I want to get one of those. And of course, back in those days, I mean, it wasn't, money wasn't as easy to come by as it is today, right? It's, a mini bike was a big expense, even though it was probably $300 or $350. And my dad did something probably the best thing ever a dad could do, and I've tried to do this with my kids too. Is my dad said to me, "You want a mini bike? Cut copper wire out of scrap cars, and when you got enough copper wire, we'll get you a bike." I thought, oh, this is great, right? So I went, every night after school, I was cutting copper wire and making a big pile. And so I brought him back there one night and said, "Here, look at the copper wire I got." He goes, "That's probably $50 worth." He said, "You got a long ways to go." So that kind of took the wind out of the sail. But I mean, I kept going, and I don't know if I ever got all the money to buy it, but he seen the effort was there, so he took me, and we got a mini bike, and I outgrew it pretty quick, and then it went to a bigger wheel motorcycle, and then the racing bug hit with bikes, and I wanted to motocross race. And at that time, I mean, you couldn't really, there was no internet, there was no media, right? You just magazines, and hearsay and, and what guys would tell you, right? Join Steel City Riders or join the CMA or so, through, just phone calls and talking to people, I did join the CMA and I got my first motocross bike. In fact, I had to talk employee at the shop into taking me to get it because Dad was busy and, seriously, Dad hated the bikes. He really didn't like bikes at all. Didn't want to even see me on a bike. But it was, like I said, it was the easiest thing to get into at the time. And once I started motocross and, the rest is history. And then the car transition was from the bikes because Dad hated the bikes so much. When I got to about 16, he wanted to see me off the bikes and he said, let's get you into a race car. And I don't know if I was ready to go to a race car at the time, but I agreed. Since he was into it and my mother was into it, they're really race nuts. So we ended up going to Jack Greenhall's one night and looking at Bruce's old car. I remember the deal vividly. Jack said to Dad, he said, you know what? Let the kid try it. Come to Cuga, let the kid try it. If he likes it, you can buy the car. I think it was $5,000 or something. And if he crashes it, you own it. Of course, brand new driver's suit, brand new helmet, go to Cuga that night. Actually, I had to pick it up because Jack had no way of getting it there. I had to pick it up on a flatbed, take it out there, and got in the, of course, they put me dead last in the heat because I was a rookie and started the heat. Green flag fell. I passed a couple cars. I thought, wow, I'm a phenom. This is going to be easy, right? I got too anxious, looped it off a two, went sliding down through the infield, clipped a light pole, knocked the back off the car, and story was, I wasn't there, but the story was Jack just looked over from the hauler to our hauler and said, you own a race car. So that was
sounds like Jack.
Yeah, you own yourself a race car. That was the start. But they said my dad just hung his head and shook his head. Well, I think that got to be a normal thing of him hanging his head and shaking his head with me because I crashed a lot of stuff when I first started out, right? It's your ability and your maturity has to take effect, and it takes a while. It's just not all right foot, right?
That car from Jack, that was the compact car, the Gremlin,
yes.
Was it? Or?
Yes, compact Gremlins. Yeah, it was Bruce's. He was the track champ the year before with it, and then Jack built a new car for him. I think mine had the old Chevelle front end and all that nonsense, and his went all to the house stuff in the new car. And of course, us being really, really green, we had no idea. You're at a detriment right off the bat. I had no idea, right? Just go out and drive the wheels off it.
He had a good piece, though. I mean, as we both know, Jack built some nice stuff, man. Smart guy.
He built great stuff, and you know what? Dad kept him on as basically a mentor and helping me out a lot. The nicest part was when I ran Syracuse and was running real well Syracuse. Jack showed up at Syracuse and come over to
oh, nice.
Yeah, that was kind of neat.
You talked about your dad, Ed. You've been in the family recycling business, I think, all your life, right? That's where you've worked all your life pretty much, right? Which is great. Great success story, family run business. And speaking about family, like so many of us in motorsports, I think success and longevity is usually because it's a reflection of the family support that we all got. I know this applies to you, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, without the family support, I was probably in motocross all my life, right? Now, I'd be like one of these guys right now running plus 60, trying to keep their bones together out there running a bike. And you know what? There's something to be said for that, too. But you know what? I had a great career in the cars, and without the family support, Mom and Dad were, like I said earlier, just racing crazy. Still today, I mean, when NASCAR is on a Sunday, they're watching that whole NASCAR race, and I always say to them, "How do you do it?" Like I can't spend 4 or 5 hours out of my afternoon on a Sunday to do that, right? But I don't mind catching the last 20 laps. But yeah. But I mean, that whole thing is just. But that's them. They still today just love it. They've got all the media, all the internet subscriptions to watch, and I think they're watching something every night, right? Yeah,
your mom's on social media, man. She follows me, and when he sent me an invite, I'm like, great, Marilyn Plazek, that's awesome, but she just loves to stay in tune, which is great.
Well, she's good at it too, and that's something for. I mean, she's 78 years old, and she's on her phone, all the time. She's on her iPad, so it's kind of a blessing that she has that. I mean, Dad doesn't really do as much of it, but she, takes it over and shows it to him, and then he looks at it, and then it goes back to her, right? So But he's got an iPhone, and I get a text from him. Usually, I get a text every birthday. And usually when I look at it, there's about 5 birthdays in a row. So he's texted me 5 years, right? But he'll say happy birthday. That's all the text says.
I know we're going to get into the dirt stuff, and we talked about your first car being a compact. I know you ran Cuga and some Flamborough stuff. Then, before you went dirt racing, you ended up with a late model. Was that a junior car?
No, that was actually Jack Greenhall car.
It was too. Okay.
That was Bruce's car, and then I don't know. I don't know really what happened there. There was something that went on. He sold us the late model car. Bruce was pretty well. I think he ended his deal there. I ran that car that was another story. We got that car. It worked really good the first night. Well, then I think I crashed it. It's hard, when you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to get those cars back to where they were before, right? We never really were the same in that car, and the car really never ever worked the same. Not that it couldn't have, it just, we had no idea how to get it back to that point, right? And in those days, well, yourself, in those days, there was only a handful of guys that really knew anything about that stuff, right? Everybody was pretty well on their own, right? So it's but I never really ran as good as the first night I ran that car. We ran, I think, in the top 5 the first night, and then after that, we struggled to get the handling back on that car after I wrecked it the second night.
And then you went and watched a dirt race with your now your son-in-law, right?
No, well, my brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law. Sorry, yes.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go back. I gotta get the memory right here. Actually, it was prior to that. My sister and her boyfriend, then, they were always going to the dirt races. One night they just sit with that.
It was Jamie, right?
No, it wasn't Jamie. It was another fellow.
Oh, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Jamie came after that. But, they said, why don't you come down and watch the Maryville qualifier with us? And, I had never been, right? So I thought, well, you know what, why not? I went down and I was a little hooked on it, I'll tell you. I watched the qualifier and I was pretty amazed at the car control and the racing, how close the racing was. It was so much different than asphalt. When I got into that, there's a good story there. How we got into the dirt was a fellow that worked for me at the time had a Wimpy Nichols car, an old Wimpy Nichols car. And this thing was a converted compact car to dirt. So he wanted my dad to actually drive it because Dad had run some Speedway Park years before that. My dad did take it out a couple times, and then I think it was about the third night my dad was at a ball tournament with my brother, and they called back and said, we're not going to make it back. They're in the championship. We're not coming back. Why don't you drive the car for the night? I said, oh, I'm game, right? Like, why not, right? So I took the car and drove. We had run asphalt the night before. I don't know where we were that night. We were back. It was a Sunday, and we took the car down to Humberstone and ran that, and he wasn't getting the car back. And I think he bowed out gracefully, and I took it from there pretty well. And we ended up cutting it up. We went up to Junior Hanley's, and Junior got me a bunch of stuff for some of the dirt late model guys are running, and we cut the back end out of it, cut the coils out of it, and put leaf springs in it and a whole bunch of things. And we actually got the car better. It wasn't great, but it was better. But when I think of what a jalopy it was, it's a wonder we even did what we did, right?
Yeah, Merrittville actually was a track that I first saw my first races at. I grew up in St. Catharines myself. Watching dirt racing was sort of, my entry to the sport. And you just talked about that specific instance for you. Is that what you would say, how you ended up being a dirt racer from that experience on?
Well, there was probably a multitude of things. I mean, motocross is pretty dirty. And it's a pretty vicious sport. And then when I got into the asphalt cars, and I mean, driving's driving. Everybody always said to me, how do you run? Like we were running an asphalt late model on Saturday nights and then a dirt car on Sunday nights. And everybody said, how do you run one and the other? And I go, well, okay, how do you drive down a road in July, or how do you drive down a winter road in January? And they went, well, it's totally different. I went, yes, it is. That's exactly how you do it. You're on one or the other. There is no blindfold, right? You just have to adapt. And some people really couldn't get it. They said they just couldn't realize how you could switch from one to another. But I mean, to me, it was pretty simple. It was a pretty easy deal. And I'll never forget when I first went to dirt. Well, sorry, it was my second year, because the second year we ended up buying a Troyer car off of Maynard Troyer, put one of Jack Greenhall's big blocks in it. I got from I think he had one sitting there that he had redone for a guy or whatever that hadn't paid or something, and we ended up buying that off him, and we put it in a Troyer car. And I never forget, about 2 or 3 races in, we always used to park with Don Turner and and Jamie Turner and those guys, and I remember Don coming over to me and saying to me, "You know something? You race way too hard." And I went, "What do you mean?" I came from motocross where we ran like 30-minute motos, and you ran all out. If you didn't run all out, you got run over, right? So I didn't know any other way to race other than hard. And he just said, you just run too hard all night. I guess he just couldn't shake me. But it was fun, and I always enjoyed the dirt more, I think, than the asphalt. But then again, when I went back and run asphalt in 2002 with the Cascar again, there was another learning curve there. But when I got going good, I enjoyed it too, right? So it depends on how you're running in it, whether you're enjoying yourself or not, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I agree. Going from one thing to another is you just have to adapt. And let's be honest, some racers never could, and that's okay. It doesn't make them a bad racer, just how it went. So yeah, dirt racing. Obviously, you were there. 18 years, I believe it was, and I think I read that you won 79-ish dirt features over the years and 4-track championships. I think you tied 3 big block championships, and you had a tie with Danny Johnson, didn't you, with the 358 at Ransomville or something?
Yeah, we did have and that was. I really don't know how 2 fools can run, 20 races in a year and tie in points for the. It was crazy. But when they came over the last night and said, "You just tied Danny for the championship," I couldn't believe it. Right? Like, how do you run by? You couldn't be 1 point apart.
Right.
But yeah, we did. But tying Danny Johnson was
big deal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, when you think about it, the guy. I don't know how many championships he would have. Probably we couldn't even count them all.
Yeah, no. And that, I know you ran a lot, and I think I said in the intro, you ran Ontario, of course, Humberstone and Merrittville. Fridays you'd go to Ransomville. You kind of did that 3-race circuit, I know, for a while. I remember when you started. Then, you started going to Central and Western New York a bunch, and man, I don't know if I remember, like, weren't you there like 3-4 days at a time sometimes and run 2, 3, 4 tracks in 1 week?
We got to a point where that's where the hauler came about, the 53 footer. And then, we were using motorhomes, and it just got so tough that, we were doing motel rooms before that. And I had a whole bunch of things in life, right? I had a bunch of kids. I had motorhomes, and then, we had to do the motel rooms sometimes without the motorhomes. And it got to be a point where the hauler came about for that reason. 3 cars in the trailer. Sometimes we were like, I think the longest we ever went was like 18 races in 19 days or something. And
wow.
That was in July, right? Where, and that's when you're, okay, there's a race at such and such. We got to the point where if you didn't take off that night after the races and drive, you'd have trouble getting there the next day. Cause, well, as you know, travel in the summer in the daytime is always worse because of traffic. And so the next thing you know, it's 3 in the afternoon, and you've still got 3 hours to go, and the gates open at 5, and it's getting tight now, right? So we started like right after the race loading up and hauling to at least try to get halfway there, or maybe right to the next track. But you needed accommodations, and so the hauler that's how it came about, and that's how the motorhomes came about. Was when you can just pull into a rest area, or you can pull right into the track gate and go to sleep. It's perfect, right? So
or keep rolling, and you have somebody else sub drive and stuff, right? Sometimes if you had to.
That's a problem too, though, because we never had enough drivers.
So we, I know we did track championships, different places, but I know there's one track in New York that was pretty near and dear to your heart, and you know what I'm going to say too. It's the Syracuse Mile at Syracuse Fairgrounds. You had a bunch of success there, man. I know you never won the big one, and I know you were close a few times. You can talk about that a bit, but I know you won a pole there once. You won the Labor Day weekend show, I think 3 years in a row at one point. That's a big deal. I know that track was, you loved it and you hated it. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, I hated it at first. I mean, the problem is it was everything was so intense with that place. First time I ever went down there, I'll never forget. We were running for Rookie of the Year against Jim Bigelow. We ended up going down to Syracuse with a short track engine and a short track Merrittville, Bransonville, Humberstone beat up car. We're going to run the mile. And I never forget going over to the tire truck. And I said, I had no idea what to do, right? Like, okay, what do I need? Well, you need Goodyear Eagles, right? So they got me geared up. And the tire guy there said, where are you from? I said, well, from Canada. And, oh, yeah, where do you run normally? I said, Merrittville, Bransonville, Humberstone. He goes, well, I'll tell you, buddy. He goes, this straightaway here is longer than Merrittville's whole track. And he said, what engine you got? I said, I just got like a short track 427. He said, you're in trouble. Yeah, you're in trouble.
You don't need tires.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I'm probably going to run my short track tires. And lo and behold, I remember we drew the pole, crazy enough. We come through 3 and 4. They threw the green. And by the time we got to 1, I was dead last. It split me and went on both sides of me because I had no engine. I was shaking so bad, probably I couldn't drive the thing, right? So
the car in your hands.
Yeah, but anyway, we ended up running the day, I believe. I can't remember what. No, sorry, we broke a motor. We broke the 427 in the heat and never made the main. And then we ended up rolling wheels was that night. We changed the motor in a rainstorm. Ended up qualifying and making rolling wheels and running the show at the wheels and broke the second motor at the wheels that night. Yeah, it looked like our Rookie of the Year deal was over until, finally we said, well, we got to find a motor. I got on the phone and called a bunch of people and did find one of Merv Treichler's backup motors. They were wanting to dump it. So we ended up getting that and putting it in. And I think we broke that the next time we went. We just didn't have much luck at that point, right? But Syracuse was a track that it found the weak link, and I can tell you just a multitude of things that happened to us there that shouldn't happen to anybody. Like we had a 358 race, won there, had a 1 going away. All of a sudden, the guy stopped talking to me, and our deal always was when you get the lead, you slow to a pace that until you get a challenge, don't put the car on the wall yourself and don't take the tires off the car yourself, right? So I'm running, I'm leading the thing, and nobody's talking to me, and I'm thinking, well, I must be doing great, right? And next thing you know, Kenny Tremont goes around the outside of me going down into 1. Well, I'm on the radio screaming at my guys, like, why weren't you telling me he was coming? Nothing. So we got second. After the race, my crew chief comes to the scale and he grabs my radio cord and shows me it's not plugged into my helmet. So, this is the stuff that Syracuse just seems to, and that never happened to us before ever. And it had to happen at Syracuse, probably in one of the biggest weekends of the year. Right?
Oh,
so,
that's too bad.
I've got so many things about Syracuse that I'm kind of glad it's gone, just for my sake, not for everybody else's sake, but just for my sake, because it makes me feel better. I beat it. I'm still here, and it's gone.
Yeah. So you were there when Blue come out with the Batmobile, didn't he?
I was not there.
You weren't there.
I was running asphalt at the time up here. That was like 81, I believe.
Okay, so just when you were starting.
Yeah, I went down there and I started during 82, and then I was at that Labor Day show at Syracuse in 83. So I was just after that. Gary Blue, that Batmobile deal was a real inspiration to us. Well, I had Junior Hanley in Oakville here, which was an inspiration. And then I had that Batmobile thing, which was a big inspiration too. I hated Syracuse, but it was such a challenge. I kept going back year after year after year and trying to get better at it. And, it was like, and I think that was our demise at that, in the late 90s. Is just, we got to a point at Syracuse that winning the race now was an obsession and it may never happen. So you got to sit back at one point and say, you know what, I might be chasing something that this is never going to happen. So, there has to be a point in time you say, you know what, I want to carry on with other points in my life and get on with something else, right?
Was your best finish second, Joe? Or
second in the 358 race? I think our best finish in the big race was either third or fourth.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned Junior and, 18 years in dirt. And I know you speak highly of him like I do. Did he help you guys with the dirt stuff a little bit, just in some different things? Like, I know he wouldn't have built your chassis or whatever, but being an inspiration, was he just an inspiration because of who he was and what he accomplished, or did he?
inspired us a lot in his time trial stuff. I took a lot of his time trial stuff from that I seen him do. He never helped me with it, but I seen him do the stuff at Cayuga, and I took a lot of that to Syracuse. We did so much stuff at Syracuse with, we chilled the fuel down. We heated the car up. We ran the car airtight and we tried to keep the motor always made more power on the dyno when it was hotter. So, but of course, there's a point of no return. You don't want to boil it over, right? So we always tried to, and there's such a big deal at Syracuse trying to get everything just to intersect and be right at the time when you're time trial. And then Junior was an inspiration in that kind of stuff to us. And another thing he inspired me on is his teams were always so clean and his trucks were always so clean and his cars were always, and that was one thing that I always wanted. When I pulled into a track, I wanted guys to feel like they were beat already because stuff just looks so nice, and it takes an immense amount of work, as you know.
And your stuff looked good.
Yeah. Well, it takes a big crew, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, but the big inspiration from Hanley and just his work ethic, right? I could never match the work ethic, but his work ethic was like, I always said to people, you can go there just about any time of the day and night within reason, and he's there slugging on something, right? So
same today.
Alex talks about Junior all the time, and that's great that he was such an inspiration to you. And thinking back earlier on in your career, whether it was 1977 when you were on asphalt on the ovals, or whether it was 82 in dirt, is there anyone else that you can say that you tried to emulate or gave you some really great advice throughout your career?
Not really, no. I mean, of course, there was the other racers. I always took something from everybody. I think everybody always has to. It's no different whether you're in stick and ball sports or hockey or whatever. You're always trying to look at what the other guy's doing right and what he's doing wrong. You don't want to do that either. I always look to other racers. I mean, Bob McCready was a great inspiration, and he was a guy that actually helped me with a lot of things. And to this day, I'm not sure whether that's a proud moment in his life or whether it was something that he wishes he hadn't done in the end. But I think deep down he enjoyed watching the progression. Like he knew that.
Sure he did.
Yeah, he knew that we could get the job done. It's just we needed to learn a little more about what we were doing. But he was one of the guys that said to me, hey, you gotta go do this, you gotta do that, you gotta try this deal. And I was always in fact, a lot of my crew guys were always angry at me because there's a lot of things we tried that didn't work, and there's a lot of things I tried that did work, but you never know. And one thing, everybody always talked to me about theories. They'd say, well, in theory that won't work. And I go, well, I don't care. I don't care what your theory is. I want to make sure it works or it doesn't work, right? And there was lots of things that guys told me that in theory that don't work, and it worked, right?
I agree. I agree. I mean, that's one thing I tell people, my nephews, anybody that asks me for advice nowadays, I tell them this. I'll tell you what works. What you do to your car, and it works. Despite what anybody tells you, theories and otherwise, like you say, what you have to do is what you have to do to go fast. And if it doesn't match what anybody else does, do not worry about it. They'll start watching what you're doing. Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
Bob McCready gave me the best one, and it's fairly clean, but it's on the dirty side. He said to me, stop going around the pits and looking up skirts. He said, work on your own stuff and make it right. He said, don't go around looking at other guys' cars. It's going to screw you up. And you know what? In the end, that's what we did. I never even walked through the pits and looked at guys' cars. I didn't really care. We were one of the first guys in dirt mods that picked up from the NDR late model guys who were covered in the back of our car. And it drove guys crazy, right? We had nothing in there, but it drove guys crazy that we had a curtain over the back of the car and they couldn't see the back suspension, right? So, and then we got to a point where we were winning a lot. We did a lot of things that just made no sense whatsoever, but people, man, they ran with it, right? Like, we changed tires right before the event. We knew what tires we were going to run. Those weren't the tires on the car. But 5 minutes before feature time, off come all the tires and on went the other tires. And you'd see the whole pit start to change things on their cars because Plazek's, he's going to something else, right? And they all go haywire. We were going to what we went with 2 hours before that, and we knew that. And you know how racers are. if you're winning the mains, they'll try anything that you're doing. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's funny. I thought about this when we were looking up to be on the podcast. We've known each other for a long time. Our families, my dad's done business with your dad and yourself, and we never, we're about the same age, but we never ever raced together, which I always find kind of weird. You started a few years earlier than me. Then by the time I started, you were going dirt racing. I stayed asphalt. And then, I head down to Tennessee, run some racetracks for a company in 2000 or 1999, 2000. You finish up on dirt, go to CASCAR in 2002, where I came from, and I'm gone. And it's kind of a bummer. We never had a chance to race, but I always kept tabs on you, and it was always fun to watch. But I just always find that a weird one where we never did.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I remember you coming to my little two-bay back in the early 80s when Mike Hillman was there, and I had a bunch of guys thrashing on stuff. And that was, and that was weird because you're right. We never really, we knew each other in racing. We knew each other race, but we never really competed against one. Maybe a good thing. We're still friends today.
Maybe,
yeah. Can't say that about everybody.
No.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how it turned out for you, starting in asphalt, then dirt racing for so many years, and finishing things off on asphalt where it all began. I guess that wasn't a plan then. No,
actually, that was my dad, and if I had my way at the time, he wanted to go back. We got out in '98, and then I dabbled a little bit in '99 and 2000. Ford Motor Company came along and bought the business office. And after that happened, Dad said he wanted to go back and do some racing because basically he was out. He was retired. I was working for Ford at the time. He said, I don't want to go back to dirt. I want to do CASCAR. I want to do something clean and professional. And I wanted to just do like a car and run the 5 or 6, Ontario shows. He said, we're doing it all or nothing. We're doing the road courses. We're doing the Western Tour, the whole deal. And I went, So anyway, I actually wanted out. I said to him, I'm not doing it. He's like, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to hire someone. And I went, like I couldn't talk him out of it no matter what I did, right? So finally I said, you know what, I'll do it. If you're going to spend the money on anybody, you might as well spend it on me, right? I ended up, calling up McCall and saying, I need a road course car. I need 2 short track cars. We had our own engine shop going here. So I talked to Dale Stroud and I said, I need some motors. And we put it all together from, this discussion was in September, I think, or October, and we put it all together and we made the first race in May at Delaware. And I had nobody hired on other than myself. And I think my son, when my son got out of school, he was going to a summer job. And I said to him, come and help me. He goes, I want some money for spending money. I said, look, I'll get you some money. We'll look after you. Right. So I'm not sure whether he'd say that was a good thing or a bad thing. I'd have to ask him, but I'm sure it taught him some things. But he was a good worker on the car, and I really had no hired help. And truth be known, I should have actually hired Damon Sharp at the time. Damon set my cars up a couple times, and I'll tell you what, smart dude, really smart guy. When I ran with his setups, I ran really, really well, and I probably should have made a deal with him and got him on full time. And I think we could have won a race or two that year. I think the best we got was 5th in Calgary. It was a learning curve. Asphalt's, I think it's more, the car's got to be more correct than dirt.
Closer to perfect.
Yeah. The driver can get away with more in dirt than the car can. And I think the car needs to be better in asphalt because the driver, he has to drive it still, but the car has to be better.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of covered where you kind of got out. I know it's probably a combination of things, right? I'm sure you're tired of being on the road a little bit. Fairly young family, all the businesses. I'm sure you're getting more involved in the business and just chewed you up. And you can talk about that. I read a couple times. I remember hearing about this, rumor crap. But there's also a story about you either got ran out of town or the tech guys are on your ass about tires and blah, 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 which, listen, I'm not buying into that, but I know you've heard it. I know you've talked about it. So just touch on that quick.
We were really, really smart in the tire deal. And I'll say smart in the end, really stupid in the beginning. what happened was they brought in a track tire back in, I think it was 93 or 4. We were running really, really bad. And, we were throwing setups around, and we really couldn't get the deal done. So finally we went to test. I had a crew chief at the time, and he had done a lot of testing with go-karts. He was a go-kart champ from the U.S. He said to me, so we got to go test. We got to spend a day or two, and we got to test. We got to get this thing, find out what's going on. So we ended up talking to Glenn Donnelly. We told Glenn, can you leave Wheat Sport just the way it is Sunday night? Don't touch it. We're going to go out Monday, and we're going to run the track. And he was, really good. He said, yep, not a problem. So, we even reminded him Sunday night, don't send the grader out, right? So, and he didn't. We went Monday, and we ran all day Monday, and we ended up trying a whole bunch of things, and we thought we had figured out a lot of things. The next week at Canandaigua, we had 2 cars, and we were going to run the first and third heat. The first heat was going to be all the new stuff we had found testing at Wheat Sport the week before. And the third heat was going to be just the car in our old trim, the old setup, just to compare the two. The crew chief came to me and said to me, what do you want for tires on that car, like our old car that we got the old setup in? I said, I don't know. I said, just put those old tires on from our test day at Wheat Sport. They were trashed. They were just rags. They were wore out. They were feathered. They looked horrible. So I thought, you know what? Give it the tires to the setup that we figure is not going to work, right? So I ran the first heat. I think we ended up 5th or 6th. Got in the show. Ran the third heat with the other setup, the old setup, and the old tires. And they threw the green, and the car was like on rails. We just went through everybody like butter and won the thing by half a track. So I come in the pits, and Kent comes over and sticks his head in the window and says, what just happened? And I went, I don't know. I got no idea. So I get in the car. We kind of debrief. And the only thing we had come up with, we said, it's got to be the tires. I said, well, put those tires on for the main. So we put the tires on for the main. We left the same. We ran the car we ended up the third heat in. We ran the old tires. And I think we were like in the top 3 in the main. I said to him, you're right. It's got to be the tires. That's the setup we were running that we trashed. And now all of a sudden we look like scholars, right? So the big deal at the time was to emulate what the track had done to those tires at Wheat Sport that day mechanically. So we ended up taking a straight front axle out of one of the mods. We put a 45-gallon drum on it. We mounted a 45-gallon drum for weight and a 3-point, like a trailer hitch with a ball hitch. And we drug this thing up and down the driveway and the road to just junk the tires. Put them on for the next week, and I think we won one of the races that weekend, and we were up front in the other 2, and it all just transpired from there. Well, that's when everybody started saying, he's doing something to his tires, right? Well,
of course.
Yeah, well, and the rule was at the time, you couldn't sipe your tires. We weren't cutting our tires. We weren't siping our tires. We were just scuffing them, basically. Whatever NASCAR team does and whatever IndyCar team does, they do the same things, right? But on dirt, the problem with dirt is it's so shiny and smooth, nothing would open up the tire. It wouldn't get and in research, finding out that the sealer mold that's on these tires is kind of like a release agent, so they come out of the mold. It stays in the first 16th of an inch or whatever, the tire, 32nd of an inch or whatever. Dirt wouldn't get that sealer mold off. So all we were doing basically was taking the sealer mold off, or the seal release agent off, and the tire was working better. And it ended up getting to be so good that we won 18 races that are like not in a row, but 18 races on 60 races in 96. We won 18 of them. We had a great percentage, and it was a lot of it was when we had good stuff and we had good engines and good cars, good guys, but a lot of it was tires. And that was our demise in 98. When 97 we won so many races, and then 98 we come back and they were all over me. And about mid-season they confiscated my tires in July, and I asked my dad. I said, he was the guy that was spending the money and was the team owner, and I said to him, like, I'm getting tired of this. Like, I'm getting hassled constantly, right? And we knew other guys were doing the same stuff. It's just nobody could say, well, he's doing it, right? Well, that was our demise. In the end, I just said to him, what do I do? and they hassled me again. And our plan was, if they hassle us again, we're just going to load up and leave. And that's what we did. And other than dabbling after that, I never really went back to dirt, right? I won a couple races after that. I went to Little Valley, actually contacted me and wanted me to come run a 358 race down there. And I said, I really don't want to go. And they said, what if we give you $1,000? And I said, well, I want $1,000 when I show up at the gate, and I'm not paying to get in. And they said, okay. So they gave me $1,000 cash when I got there, and we won the race, and it was like $2,500 cash. So we come home with $3,500. Felt pretty good, but I really was so disgruntled with the whole deal. We ended up selling little stuff off. I mean, Sweeteners called me and said, Billy Taylor called me and said, what are you doing? Are you in or out? I said, I'm out. And he said, what do you want for this? What do you want for that? And pretty well the whole team went, yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, right?
It was just time anyways, right? But that just...
Well, I was late 30s, and I always said to my wife I wasn't going to run past 40. I just didn't want to run past 40. I watch guys, run past 40 and just not be the same guys, right? I just said, you know what, I don't want, so I was 38 at the time, I think. So I was really close. Yeah, we got it. I was 42 though when we ran the cast car. Yeah, and it's tougher at 42 than it is at in your 30s. There's no doubt. So yeah. But anyway, that was kind of the tired story. I have no regrets, and I'm proud of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had those guys. We had those guys in a tailspin for a long time. What we were doing, and it was something so simple. Man, everybody. I heard stories that I had some California tire system that I had paid crazy money for, and it just went on and on. Every time I heard one, I laughed. Right? It was like, but it got to a point where it was out of control. Right? So that was the tire story.
That's great.
Well, that's a perfect segue onto our next topic. Joe, you were inducted into the Northeast Dirt Modified Hall of Fame in 2009, and also the Fourscore Club in 2012. Did either of these inductions come as a surprise to you, and how does it make you feel to be inducted to both of these institutions?
The 09 one came as a surprise because I was still pretty young. There were some guys that were older than me that weren't in there yet. And I remember saying to them, such and such isn't in yet. Like, what are you doing? Like, and they went, no, we want you, And I was really, I mean, even though it was dirt and dirt they didn't hold any grudge against me leaving or any of that stuff. I still didn't feel really good about going back and doing this. But hindsight being 2020, it was actually really, really a good day, and we had fun with it. Mm-hmm. But I really didn't want to do it at the time. And then when Fourscore got a hold of me in 12, I was, more at peace with it. We were actually in Florida when they got, I think just before I was going to Florida, they got a hold of me and said, our dinner's going to be on December. So, and I went, am I home? And we looked, and yeah, we were home like the day before or something. So we got home from Florida, went down to the Fourscore banquet, and we had a good time that night too. Right? I got to sit with a few guys that I can't even remember who was. I think there was a couple Asheville guys from Spencer Speedway and that were inducted at the same time, and it was a good night. We had a good time. So yeah, but they were surprised. I mean, the 09 one was real surprise. The 12 one wasn't as much as a surprise because we'd already been inducted into the dirt, which the dirt was the granddaddy, right? So then the Fourscore was more of a Western New York kind of thing, right? So, but yeah,
that's great.
The 09 one was a surprise.
Gotta love Western New York, Alex.
Except for the Sabres. And Joe spent a lot of time in Western New York's pal, and he's a Leafs fan. So I apologize. Mark's a Sabres fan and a Bills fan. Yeah, it's unfortunate. But he has to live with himself.
If Hall's foot had been in the crease years ago there, you would have won the cup.
Yeah, there we go. See?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We'll move on from that, Alex.
Yeah, we will. I had to bring this up. I know the answer, but I had to bring this up because a lot of people always ask me this. But, as you know, I drove for Sam Rounce and with Randy, and I had the car number 39, Sam's late model. And, of course, my numbers had red maple leaf in the middle. Yeah. And you know where that came from. Randy's did as well. And Joe Plazek's did. I was always asked then, and I get asked all the time, not all the time, but quite often still today when they see pictures of my car. And I know this didn't come from me, But who had that number first, that style?
I would think Randy had a 13, I think, right?
That's right, the midi stock. Yeah.
And you know what? Truth be known, and I've told this before, I heard it through the grapevine. Randy's never said nothing to me personally, but I did hear through the grapevine once that Randy said that I copied his number, and it was so far from the truth that I liked his number. It might have made me do what I did, but if you look at my Canadian number 1, it emulates the Harley Davidson US number 1 from the Harley emblem years and years ago, that they had the stars and stripes in the 1. Mm-hmm. And all I did was, being a motocross guy and a big bike guy and a fan of motorcycles, I took the Harley 1 and just converted it to a Canadian 1. And the 1 came from Bill Daniels, was the tech guy at Cuga when I showed up with that new compact from Bruce. And what we had done is taken the baby blue Greenhall car to the body shop, and they sprayed it white. And all I showed up with was a total white Gremlin bodied compact car, and no number on it, nothing. But my number was supposed to be 77. Well, there was already a 77. I think Bill Zavados or something was 77 at the time. And being 16 years old, you don't have a clue what you're doing. Bill Daniels said to me, just take a strip of duct tape and put a 1 on it for the night, and then we'll figure it out later. Well, the 1 just stayed on the car. We ended up painting what is the Canadian 1 on that car after that. And I mean, that number transpired a little and got a little nicer as time went on. But in the end, I really liked it. We got it to a point where it was wide and fat and the leaf was big. But no, that's the true story on the number. And it had nothing to do with Randy Slack or Alex Nagy or
Oh, I know it wasn't me, buddy, but I know it's just I know you and Randy, like you say, we all knew Randy started before us, and
a little bit, yeah.
Whether your dad influenced that or at all, but anyways, I get it, and I think it's cool. I mean, the rest is history. You and Randy both had a bunch of success with that number style. That's cool. I get asked a lot, and I just thought, I got to bring that up to Joe.
Yeah, well, you know what, and I always laugh at the Canadian 1 now is it's a symbol. Like, yeah. I put it on my snowmobile, right? I got a little tiny one on both sides of my snowmobile, right? And I'll be out on the trail somewhere, and somebody will go, you're a Joe Plazek fan, and I'll go,
yeah,
I am. And it's a symbol, right? We turned it into a symbol that's recognizable on both sides of the board. In fact, a buddy of mine sent me a picture of a truck back glass. He was walking through some mall down in Rochester one day, and he took a picture of a Canadian number 1, my 1, on the back glass of a pickup truck down there. No idea whose it is, but it's a symbol. That's what it is now.
Wow. Well, speaking of fans, I know your fans on both sides of the border would like to know what's keeping you busy now that you've left racing, and do you have any new hobbies that you can share?
Well, I left racing in 2002, basically. When I got out of the CASCAR on the last day, we had won Rookie of the Year, and my wife was done. I was done. We kind of said, that's it. Except we did kind of want to go back the second year in CASCAR if a sponsor came along, and PlayStation backed out, and we never did get to go back. And when Don Thompson's team or Fitzpatrick's team, all the stuff went missing in Quebec, they took everything I had and did another team with it. So that got us pretty well. The shop cleaned out, and I was out. I did a bunch of things. My boys were young at the time. We did a lot of wakeboarding. They liked we got a wakeboard boat and started going to competitions and this and that. And they liked motorcycles. I don't know where they got that from, but except for one, I got 4 boys and a girl, but the 3 boys were interested in bikes, and they ran motorcycles. And of course, we ended up going to a lot of motocross events in Canada, and then I talked them into going into the U.S. and trying in the U.S. And once they went into the U.S., they didn't want to come back to Canada. They just loved the U.S. tracks. They loved the way they prepped, professionalism down there. And we ran down there until my youngest guy was the last guy running, and he's 27 or 28 now. But when he was in his late teens and early 20s, he ran quite a bit and got busted up a ton. And finally, my wife just said, you know what? He's not going to be a pro at this. He's not going to make any money at this. So really needs to get out of it, right? And he still rides today, but he doesn't race. We have a track at the farm here and stuff, and he runs it, but he doesn't go to any organized events, which I don't get totally, because we've got an 80-foot jump in our track,
wow.
and my wife says it's safer than it is at the racetrack. And I go, no, it's no safer. In fact, it's probably worse, right? But so we did a little of that. I tried to do Florida in December. I could take the Harley down and take the motor home, and of course this year we didn't go. So there's the business. There's and there's a whole the life cycle is as a kid's age now. Of course, I got my oldest guy building a house. My second boy just bought a house. My daughter's got my second boy's got a daughter. My daughter's got a daughter. So we got grandkids. So everything since racing has transpired. And did I get it at the right time? Looking back, yes. Was it the right way? Probably not. But I don't know how Alex knows this. How do you cut racing off? It's something that's, even today, my family still laughs at me because, I said I got to go do a race interview at 3:00, and they went, "Oh no!" Like,
with another old guy.
Yeah. Why don't you give this up? Like I go, well, you know what? I enjoy it. I've got good stories, and I got good history on it, and we just have a lot of fun with it, right? But they don't get it. They just and as time goes on, like we'll get so many guys come into the shop and go, where's your dad? I used to watch him run. And they go, oh no, not another one. Like,
that's awesome.
Since racing, I mean, everything has transpired. I don't regret anything we did. In fact, my sled's a fast sled, and people say to me, well, why do you, like, I've got different clutching in it and different, I got a Motec kit in it, a turbo on it. They go, why do you screw with this stuff? And I go, that's
what you do.
Exactly. I love tinkering. I love it. My Harley, I've had the engines done on my Harleys. They're about double the horsepower and stuff. Everybody says why, and I go, I don't know. I think you're either a gearhead or you're not. Yeah, and it's just in you to play with stuff, and you always want more power, and you want it to run better. And I'll go as far as my here's a good story, and this along the same lines, but not along the same lines. I've got a diesel Duramax that we run up north sledding. It's my sled hauler. And I always wanted to run at optimal temperature. So I built myself. I looked at online and I seen the winter fronts online were just vinyl, Velcro winter fronts. I went, no. So I took sheet aluminum and I cut it and made something to fit right in the grill and wing Zeus's to hold it in. And it looks pretty neat. The guys that sled with me, they'll be riding with me and I'll say, it's getting a little too warm. I got to stop and pull a flap off the front. And they laugh like hell. They go, what is this, NASCAR? Like, you gotta take duct tape off. And I go, yeah, I got to pull a flap off because I'm starting to get up a little too hot, right? But that's the thing that's in you as a racer to be. I mean, most guys would just let that run at 160 Fahrenheit and not care. I wanted to be 200 or 195. I just know the efficiency's better, the oil's better at that temperature, and everything is just good. I agree. It's either in you or it's not.
Yeah, I'm with you. Talking about your Harley, just thought of something. We didn't get a chance to race together or against each other, but we can go riding, man. We need to make sure that happens.
Sure, yeah.
This summer, we need to make sure.
Yeah, well, you know what? Hopefully, even with COVID, we can still.
Yeah, we can still ride. Yeah.
But yeah, I try to do a couple. As I mature in this whole thing, I hope to back off at the shop and plan on some Fridays and just do some Ontario rides that are just neat and maybe not as long as I'd like to go, but I mean, hopefully when this thing's all over, we can rent motel rooms again and stay places and things like that. But right now, it would just probably be a day trip and come back. But we'll definitely do that. That's that. I won't rub you on the Harley. I'm pretty clean on the Harley. I won't run into you. Yeah.
You're not going to put that bitch sideways or nothing?
No.
Okay.
No. That thing's too heavy, and I think if you dump that on your leg's probably broken.
Alex is a pretty tame rider. He gets passed by scooters all the time.
Yeah. Well, listen. Yeah. We're winding down here, so I'm gonna just so you know where Mark's coming from. Mark used to have a Harley too. He had it for about 2 months. He come from a scooter. I convinced him to buy a real bike. And of course, he writes it off in about 2 months or 3 months, whatever it was. And now, he's got sparrow nuts now. So of course, he doesn't ride anything.
When you get a little older, it hurts a little more when you bounce off the pavement.
Did you drop your Harley?
I got hit. I got hit up in Cambridge.
At a traffic circle.
Alex was long gone. He was like a mile ahead at the time.
How could I be long gone? I thought you said I'm slow.
Yeah. Well, you got a head start. Anyway.
Well, that happens because I had a buddy I run with all the time on the Harley, and he ended up sitting still in traffic, and a girl was cutting through trying to get out into traffic and run right into him, knocked him off his bike. And you know what? It was probably one of those things like slow motion, right?
It was exactly right, yeah.
But man, after he did that, he rode with me. He was just a different guy, and finally he sold his bike. My second boy's got his bike now. He just
I saw that. Okay.
Yeah, and he's got his bike. So it does happen. And although, you know what, I haven't been off mine. I don't want to be off mine. I never want to get knocked off it. But I was never very smart when it came to crashing and getting hurt. Yeah. Like I was always getting back on the horse, unfortunately. And maybe I should have stayed off some of them. But
yeah. I did ride it home though, Alex. Twisted handlebars and all.
Yeah, because we shamed you.
Yeah, well,
I said, dude, get on it.
There's no way I wasn't going to. Yeah.
See, my buddy, he didn't. They called the ambulance and he called me and I towed it in. And when it came in, I looked at him and went, "What's wrong with this thing? There's nothing wrong with it. I would have rode it home, right?" He goes, "Well, I'm not you. I'm not a race car guy."
Well, Joe, do you have any social media or anything that you want to share with our listeners or fans of yours so they can interact with you online?
Oh, we do it all. We do the Facebook. We do the Twitter, our shop website, Plazek.com. I used to have a Plazek racing site, but of course we kind of just let that go by the wayside. I'm not sure we should have, but we did. I'm kind of a news junkie. I kind of like Twitter's probably my favorite because it's short. It's
great.
There's just bullets that come through that, of things going on. Facebook to me has become, I don't know, too political, too much,
toxic.
Yeah. And only things I post is I try to post neat things that people don't see every day. But
yeah. I saw a couple cool pictures that you posted there on Twitter not too long ago with a checkered flag.
The best thing with Twitter is I get photos that I've never seen before, and it's like guys took a photo with their camera at Syracuse, and I go, I've never seen that. Like it was the two cars at the hauler, or us changing an engine or something, and that's the real neat stuff I like. And I save that stuff. I probably have 500 photos saved. And they're pictures I've never seen ever before, right? So that's awesome. Thing. And you know what? We have fun with it. There's video clips that are being posted now of us running out of gas at Syracuse, which was always my claim to fame.
Great.
Well, going for $10,000 and missing it by 500 feet.
We'll be sure to share your Twitter handle to our listeners online. Been great talking to you today. Hope we can have you back on again. I feel like there's a few stories that we missed there. I know that Alex was real anxious to have you on. I'm super glad to have met you. And hopefully we'll see you at Jukasa. I'd love to meet you in person.
Yeah, I haven't been out there yet. And of course, the COVID thing hit. I think you guys just got a year or so in, and then the COVID thing hit. But I wouldn't mind coming out for an event and having a look. I ran. That was my first track I ever ran. Well, I told you that. I think the inner light standards are gone now, so that's a good thing for me because remember those, Alex? They were the big wooded
railway ties.
Yeah, well, I whacked one of those, and those.
Well, when Earnhardt was here and he drove Randy's late model, I was gas man. He got turned in the back straight and backed into one of those and hurt his back. And actually, that was the last non-cup race he ever did. He said, "Screw this! I'm not doing anything else anymore." Yeah, he hurt himself pretty good.
I remember that was always a neat thing watching those guys come up. I mean, I seen Waltrip there, I seen Elliott, Earnhardt, a bunch of those guys. And I think the neatest thing I was at Junior's shop right after he ran one of the ASA races, and I think he was chasing Kowicki most of the day, or right in that area somewhere. I can't say exactly what he said because Junior, there was never any words held back. But I asked him about Kowicki, and he said, that guy's bleeping good. And you know what? He showed up.
Right.
Yeah, oh yeah. Junior knew, right? Like he knew how good a guy. Yeah, and it didn't take, after I thought, wow, he called that a long time ago, because I had never heard of Alan Kowicki until that. Right. I think he had that radio station on his car or something.
Yep, 97 and WDX or something.
Yeah. I never heard of him, and man, he ran up front all day, and Junior called it. He said, the guy's he's a good driver. Yeah. And he proved it.
Yeah, he did. Cup champion. Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, listen, it was great to have you. Great to catch up. I'm going to hold you to the bike deal. We're going to go for some rides this summer.
Sure. We're going to do that. Yeah, you
Sounds
can hold
great.
that. Yep.
Say hi to the family for us. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, Mark, another great guest. Holy smokes. Joe is quite a racer, like you said, and got a great history in the sport and loves to talk about it, has great stories. So it's always fun to have people like him on and share those stories with our listeners. Another show's come to an end. Tell our listeners how they can support us.
Okay, so here's the deal. More listeners is the name of the game for us, for Driver MD. If you like and subscribe to our podcast, we'll definitely get more love from the podcast distributors like the Spotifys, the Apples, and the Googles of the world. They'll help promote our podcast to other people. And the best way for you to help us, if you're listening from our website at wingnutsports.com, is just to scroll to the bottom of the page, click on whichever link for the favorite podcast players that you like there, and subscribe to us. For those of you that listen on Apple Podcasts, which we know there's quite a few, just scroll to the bottom of our podcast, and you'll see where you can rate us. And if you see fit, Alex and I would certainly appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating. Alex, why don't you tell our listeners how they can join the conversation online with us?
Of course, on Facebook, facebook.com/wingnuts. Just search Wingnut Sports and you'll find us. Instagram, the same thing, at Wingnut Sports. Website, same, wingnutsports.com. And of course, we want to send us a note, wingnutsports@gmail.com, or on our personal Twitter accounts at nags_Alex or at WNS_Mark.
Yeah, and if you do visit our website at wingnutsports.com, don't forget to check out our show notes. You'll find links to our content and maybe surprise here and there.
Yep, absolutely. And hey, another one's come to an end. Like we said, this has been the Driver MD podcast with your hosts, Mark and Alex.
Hope to see you next time.